Hello, 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 and hi. It is I. And I just feel very sing-songy today, I guess. But we're here to ramble about Oghma, or Ogmios. Um, Oghma being the name for this deity in like Scotland and Ireland primarily, and then Ogmios being like the like Gaelic name for him, meaning like more of the southern Celtic territories. Um, Regardless, to me, it's all the same deity. I've never really seen anyone say that Ogmios and Oghma are not the same person, but they definitely are. um, as is with all of this Celtic stuff we always talk about, you realize that like the pan Celtic culture is essentially can be boiled down to the same pantheon of deities usually, not always, but they all have like different names, like variants of a name for their gods depending on which Celtic tribe you're looking at. Anywho, Oghma is what we'll be calling him right now because that's the most popular name for him. And Oghma is the deity of Ogham. Um, by now, if you've watched this channel, you know what Ogham is. If you don't, I encourage you to go watch my videos about Ogham on this channel. And book a reading with me, and I will read your Ogham for you. So he's, said to be the deity who gave us Ogham, which originally was just a written language. It was just used for inscription to identify things, road markers, and such labels to make little labels. Somewhere along the way, it has become a divination system. Although we do not think that that was what it was originally, but who knows? We don't know. Especially with Celtic culture. So what is really cool, I think, about Oghma is that in some instances he is worshipped in a triad, and this goes back pretty far in history, where it's like him and Dagda, who is like the father god, and Lu. Lu is like the jack of all trades, master of none deity. He can do everything, but not necessarily be the best at it. But he can do everything. He's a really great deity. He's very trickstery, but not in a negative way, in a positive, innocent way, which I think is unique among trickster deities. But anywho, I told you this is a ramble. So Oghma, yes. So he's sometimes worshipped in a triad like that, and they're called the gods of skill because they are all very skilled in particular things. And then he's seen as like a god of poetry, of eloquence, of words. But we do have some old inscriptions in Ogham where people are asking Oghma to cast curses for them, to reverse curses for them, for blessings. So in that sense, he also seems to be a deity of magic, but specifically like written spells, I would think, or spoken spells, because he is a god of like poetry and literature, right? He's a god of like speaking, of language. So to write a spell out and cast it, or to speak a spell out or sing it, would be, that's Oghma magic right there. So he immediately we start gathering all these attributes, like lots of them for him. He also is a very, very skilled warrior, particularly martially. I don't know what that was. We see this in a story where the Tuatha are fighting off the Firbolgs and trying to take back Ireland, and Oghma proves himself to be proficient with weapons. But what I think is cool is that they specifically note that he proved his worth based on his martial skills, which to me, means to fight with no weapons, just with your hands, and your body. So that's really cool. So that makes me think that, that's a little Skitakish there, because, she's all about, like, martial arts. But Another thing I think is neat is that sometimes his mother is quoted as being Bride or Bridget or Breed or whatever you want to call her, which we all know. She's a very popular Celtic goddess. That's quoted sometimes as his mother, which makes sense because they share so many similar attributes. And they are very similar as well, I think, in their like energy and demeanor. If you call on them, you will experience that, I think. Sometimes it's seen as his sister, not his mother. It could be both. Because you know how it is with the gods. Sometimes his mother is seen as Idun or Etain, or Ethlon, who is like sometimes seen as a sun goddess, but that's neither here nor there. But he's a fascinating deity, and I think what's neat also is that he is sometimes, well, almost always, not portrayed as necessarily attractive, which is something we see sometimes with the Dagda too. He will be sometimes portrayed as like pot-bellied or bald or balding. He's sometimes portrayed with a lot of blemishes. Sometimes he's completely sunburned, like specifically sunburned, and you'll read that a lot too about him. He sometimes is portrayed with a huge beard full of like jewelry and chains. Sometimes his tongue is so long that he cannot keep it in his mouth, and it's literally dragging behind him. And there are chains attached to his tongue, and attached to those chains are men that follow him along. So he has men in chains attached to his tongue, which is fascinating. This is so metaphorical because, he's sometimes called the honey-tongued or the mead mouth. And I think what that means is that, yes, he's probably like rash and rowdy and can get crazy, but he's a god of language and eloquence. So I think that his words are literally his magic. Like I said before, like spoken spell work. So he literally can like enslave men with his mouth, like what comes out of his mouth. That almost sounded wrong, but you get it. He has that much power over his words. So invoke him if you have trouble speaking, public speaking, if you're acting in a role, but if you have to speak at all or give a presentation, if you're about to do an interview at work, I think he's a great deity to call on. If you're going to do readings for people, like I do, he's one of the deities that I always call on. He's right there, that white picture right here. That's a picture of Oghma that I keep above my altar. But yes. I always want to speak clearly and not ramble too much when I'm giving a reading, so I definitely call on him for focus. And for enunciation, because being a southerner, that's something I sometimes struggle with, and I just want to sound like blah, 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 blah. Anywho, Oghma. He's a really neat deity. I think, like the Dagda, you'll be so surprised by him if you call on him, because he is not that hyper-masculine deity. He's not. He's not the, macho butch guy. He's like a laid-back grandpa, uncle type. Do you know what I mean? He's like very funny. He enjoys laughing. He enjoys alcohol. He enjoys food. He enjoys being loud and funny. Like, that's very much Dagda and Oghma energy. So I see how, and the same with Lu. Lu, I see, is much younger than them, but he's, very just jovial. And I see why the three of them would be worshipped or worked with in tandem, because they are just so light-hearted. So, I encourage you to go read about him and the other two. They're fantastic. And they will break down your prejudices that you have on the cis hetero man in today's world, if you have them, which I'm sure you do. So, they're really great. Go check out Oghma, and go check out his Ogham. He's amazing. And remember, you can book a tarot reading, a rune reading, an Ogham reading, an oracle reading, with me following the link down below. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Goodbye.